The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Well, good morning and good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today for what is our 5th webinar of Asset Management Awareness Month 2023. My name is Scott Ray. I'm your Vice President of Events, or Seminars and Events with the MPMA. And welcome to our last presentation of the month. I hope you all are doing well. Before I get to our keynote speaker here, our main speaker, and an interesting topic that I had or that we asked him to present on this time, I just wanted to touch on a few features of GoToWebinar and that you may or may not be aware of. First and foremost, if you do have a question, go ahead and pop that into the chat box. Doug will be monitoring that throughout the presentation, and will address those questions as he sees fit throughout the time. Secondly, if you would like to make us and our cameras larger, there is a gray rectangular line just under our camera images. If you were to take that and hover above the three lines right in the middle of our images here, and you were to pull down, that makes us nice and big and large and in your face a little bit more. If you were to pull up, that makes us much smaller. So you can kind of play with what you're able to see in terms of the presentation slides and our cameras in that way. Another item to remind everyone of is that if you are an MPMA or a current MPMA member, you will be receiving a CEU for attending this webinar. Those will be available for you to view in My Learning, and they will be up and uploaded to your profile by the middle of April. So just hang on. If you don't see it by mid to end of April, then definitely reach out. But everyone behind the scenes is working hard to get those uploaded to your profile so you get credit for attending. So with that, I'd like to welcome in our speaker today, Dr. Doug Getz, who is speaking to us on an interesting topic from a perspective. I at times like to give him different focuses from maybe what he's usually used to presenting on, and this is one of them. So Doug is here today to present on the importance of understanding in property and asset management. Doug, welcome into the broadcast. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for agreeing to put this presentation together, and I will turn it over to you.
Very good. Thank you, Scott. Appreciate the introduction. Thank you to everybody in attendance. Absolutely wonderful to do this. My travel schedule is rather limited, but through the technology that exists, this is amazing because we can talk to each other and share and grow in our knowledge and understanding of our world. So yeah, Scott came to me with this topic, and it's like, oh, really? Understanding? What are you talking about? So with that, let me give you some background here as to my thoughts. So normally I talk about technical issues. That's my forte, my strength, right? But for this session, I was sort of asked to present a topic that has no definitive answer. Rather, this is your world right now. It's driven and dependent upon each of you and how you want to go about living in your professional life and where you want to go in your professional life. So a lot of this is more philosophical than technical, but I've tried to put together stuff that you can take back with you, and the presentation will be available. I think that's part of Lisa's responsibilities to make sure that gets out to all attendees, so you can sit and think about what's going on with that. So first off, right, if we're going to talk about understanding property and assets, you got to understand where you are, right? Where we are at this point. And I know that may sound like a humorous statement, but if we're in the NPMA, a lot of times we're very parochial as to what we mean by property or assets. You know, we have many members that deal with contract property, university property, state and local property, hospital property. But my question to you is, do you ever stop and consider the foundational elements of property / asset management, those foundational elements that apply to all environments that are out there? Yes, I know some people are chuckling already about the way I say all, but I'm a New Yorker, so sometimes my language is slightly has that slight New York accent there. So here's where I'd like to create a starting point, and that is at some of the basics. I do not know of a single environment that doesn't deal with property and assets. Unless you're getting into something that's purely theoretical, where you can cogitate on that in your mind without putting anything down or without experimenting or without testing or without handling materials. Every environment out there deals with some form of property and asset. I think that's great. Every environment has learned to manage that property, to manage those assets, and many of them are different. Some very good ways, some very bad ways. No one environment has control over all the other environments. Now, the reason I put that in there is because many times we talk about things like the Federal Acquisition Regulations, the FAR. We talk about the DoD supplement and DFARS and contract property management, but that's only one small slice of the pie. So we have to ask then, is commercial asset management, does it follow the same rules as the Department of Defense? And honestly, from my envisionment, no, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. We created an artificial environment to handle the requirements of DoD, to handle the requirements of the federal government. And even within the federal government, we do things differently. There's Department of Energy, DOE, there's NASA, there's EPA, there's FAA. Some follow the FAR, others don't follow the FAR. So I wanted to think about the multitude of environments that we deal with. So one of my first points that I have to deal with is to understand property and asset management, and I'm going to refer to that as PAM, property asset management. You need to understand your context. Where are you coming from in your career, in your profession right now? And we have lots of variety within our organization, all right? So there are lots of specializations, and I wanted to bring a few of those to the fore here. Commercial, property asset management, federal PAM, utilities PAM, facilities PAM, university, hospital, contract, infrastructure, state and local PAM, and even things like real property. This organization over in England has, for some odd reason, bestowed upon me membership, or at least involvement with their property world, which deals only with real estate. So this is a really cool newsletter that I get every week that they do a great job, but all of their focus is on buildings and real estate. So we are all different, and I just wanted to show you that don't ever think that your environment is the only environment that you're ever going to deal with, because that may not be the case. So understanding that we're all different, but we have common characteristics. And I wanted to think about where are you now, right? In your career, in this profession, where are you now? So I have a slide here that covers a couple different things, and regrettably, the animation did not work. So what I'm looking at is the idea of, are you a beginner? Have you been here a while? Have you been here a while doing the same stuff in the same way over and over again? Have you been here a while and moved up within your organization, or have you reached self-actualization in accordance with Maslow's hierarchy of needs? And the picture on the right-hand side of your screen there, that is Maslow, who created that typology for needs, and that people have amplified upon that. So let me walk you through 5 different levels that I've looked at, all right? 5 different levels. Where are you now? If you're listening to this presentation and you're a beginner, you were just hired, how did you, at this stage of your career, understand PAM? Well, for me, the boss said, do this, do that. You follow these procedures, and you better do it right because we get audited. Did you really understand why as to what you were doing? I'll tell you right now, I didn't. I came in as a lowly GS5 to the United States government, to the Department of Defense, to an organization called DEUX. My boss told me to do stuff. I sat down and read the regulations he assigned to me, and I thought, oh my goodness, what did I ever get myself into? These people are maniacs talking about all this stuff. I didn't understand the depth and breadth of what we were doing. So where are you right now? If you just came in, you're at this beginner level per se. Well, maybe you've been here a while. That's another thing. I have to assume you've gotten more experience in doing what the boss has told you to. You don't need to ask all the time, well, how do I do this? You're more comfortable with PAM. Cool. I got this. I'm really good at doing what I've been told to do. The same thing over and over again. But was I understanding the hows and whys of doing something? It was more like rote application. And rote application is okay in some instances. It may not be in other instances. Have you been doing the same stuff the same way over and over again with the catchphrase, well, that's the way we've always done it? Are you on that hamster wheel? Or are you thinking about the hows and whys, the effectiveness or efficiency of what you do? Do you understand property and asset management? Do you understand PAM? One more. We got a couple more levels. Have you been here in PAM for a while and moved up the ranks? Hey, wait a minute. You've been promoted. You might even have a title. The big thing is, do you have an office with a door? It took me 30 plus years before they gave me an office with a door. And the only reason they did that was because I was very loud. And some of the other faculty members didn't like my volume, all right? But that's besides what we're talking about, that you have credibility here, that you know what you're doing and they respect you and felt that you needed that. Offices are important. You might also be teaching and managing, all right, a group of dedicated, hardworking folks out there. But again, do you understand the implications of what you were doing? Are you thinking deeply about PAM and what we're doing in that world, right? And then let's go to this top level. Have you reached self-actualization? A la Maslow there. Wait a minute, Doug, I got my act together and I do know what I'm doing and why I do it. And I see continuous improvement in what I do for the entity that I'm involved with, irrespective of where you're coming from. I have grown and matured within the field. I actually understand PAM to a depth and breadth that I never envisioned before. So within this presentation, I'm going to ask you to think, where are you on this ladder of understanding? You know, what rung do you exist? And do you want to move up those rungs and see what you can do? So great. When I'm thinking about this, as I was preparing for this, I was really in a quandary because my background is from an educational perspective. My background is not only a practitioner in property, because I was a industrial property management specialist and a property administrator for the old organization DEUX, now DCMA. So I knew the workings of the organization, but I kept asking more and more questions of my leadership. And then we'll talk about self-directed learning a little bit later. So I wanted to think about this from an educational perspective. And here's where I came up with that. So if you ask me what I need to know to understand PAM, here is my take on our profession. And I do have a slightly humorous perspective there. So if you wanted to see that, nope, that's not the one I wanted. That's not my slide. That changed. Okay, I had put a slide there of Robin Williams and the thinker holding up a roll of toilet paper there. So you'll have to forgive me. I thought that was interesting. So there he is. I'm sorry, I had put that in as an animation there. Only Robin Williams would have thought to hand the Rodin statue of the thinker a roll of toilet paper. All right, so had to share that there. I need to look slightly over to the left here, and I do see a question. And Lisa, you're going to have to help me on the question because I can't see what the question was. It's truncated. I can't figure out how to get to move down and show me the whole question at the same time. Oh, well, we'll worry about that.
Okay, I was going to say, it's a comment from Steve Holland. Each environment is different, especially if you are communicating with financial management professionals. They talk assets. We as property management professionals talk about property management in the context of all asset categories, both federal contracts and corporate property.
And Steve, if you noticed, I'm using the term P/AM, yes, because I'm going to show you some of those environments. So Steve, a very wise comment there, right? We will get there, all right? I know exactly where you're coming from, so that's cool. So to reach our growth then, to reach our understanding, I tried to collect some resources to consider. Now, you might have known that working with Dr. John Paciorek and Professor Chuck Wazak, we ran the property shop at the Air Force Institute of Technology and Defense Acquisition University. Tanya Guy Green is now in charge of that program. But if I was to redesign the program, I would take a different tack from the 5 classes that we created while I was there as the program director. So I'm going to walk you through a different perspective that you might not have seen, all right? So here we go. Here are the constructs that I would want to consider for foundational elements, all right? Certainly ISO. Why ISO? Why would I want to look at ISO? Because that would have applicability to every environment that we're dealing with from the standpoint of property/asset management, PAM standards. If you have not read and studied and analyzed the ISO requirements, and you say that you're a property professional, I would encourage you to go further and study those to see how they can be used to improve your concerns there. There are the voluntary consensus standards available from that ISO perspective. So I would want to use that as my first introductory lesson for folks to look at and understand and to then dig deeper. Well, Doug, yeah, ISO's cool, but that doesn't really apply to me. Yeah, it does. It does to understand asset management. But there's more. If I wanted to look at a foundational element today, I would want to look at the ASTM standards. American Society for Testing and Materials, now just known as ASTM. There's a standard practice for establishing the guiding principles. Wait a minute, this doesn't say contract property. This doesn't say real property. This just says guiding principles of property/asset management. Rather interesting. Have you read through that standard to foster your understanding of this requirement? And look at what it says. The practice covers the creation of a set of guiding principles that, when adopted, is endorsed by top management to be applied for the practice of property management. Enunciate the objectives and intent, also known as asset management community. Stress simplified procedures, promote more than less judgment, rather than by the book decisions and adoption of best practices. Be careful how you define best practices. Be careful how you define a VCS Be careful how you define an ILP. Be careful how you define a best practice. And other presentations have been given that talk about the differences, the nuances, why those things are different, right? So I believe that those are some foundational elements. Now, that's just one VCS that we're looking at. I would encourage you need to look at all the underlying standards as they apply, to your environment to foster your understanding. Interesting. So I started as a GS5, Industrial Property Management Specialist. I allegedly grew and matured as a practitioner and then as an academic who specialized in PAM. But as an academic, I was heavily influenced by literature. I didn't want just somebody to tell me what I should do. I wanted to read the whys, the wherefores. What is the efficacy that's related to this? It was not so much that someone told me, but I wanted to read and research and evaluate and analyze and test to see what is effective and efficient. And some of you know that I like big words. So the sesquipedalian word, that's a person who uses big words, is efficacious. How much of this stuff is really effective? And in fact, I'm working with a student right now at one of the universities that wanted to know, well, why did they come up with this percentage of accuracy? And it was like, darned if I know. I really don't know where they got that from. Sometimes, I've seen this within the government, they just pull a number from the sky. Now, certain other areas, I've seen extensive research that was done to determine what's the best way to do that. Okay, can't do that in every case, but a lot of cases. So let me show you a little bit about my perspective there. Is there commercial literature? Now, I'm not talking about literature that only deals with the commercial side. I'm talking about literature that you can go to a bookstore or online with Amazon or any of the other publishers that are there and look for commercial literature dealing with our field. Absolutely. Tons of books out there, right? Some of you can see the back here. I only have a few books now. I donated over 500 books to the Wright State Library that were in my library as I've started to downsize a little bit because my Arctic blonde hair Clairol number 49 shows that I'm getting older as we do this. It's not going to be called property and asset management. What you need is to search out that other world, expanding your repertoire into topics embedded within our profession. Yes, we have on the left-hand side of the screen your government perspective. We know that there's a FAR and DFARs. We know that there's the DCMA property guidebook. We know that there's the DODI instructions that are out there. We know those things that are there. But if you look to the right-hand side, are there other commercial business perspectives that we should be looking at? What do those mean? Oh, come on. Look at all of these. In my quick search for things that were related, material management, inventory management, supply chain, facilities, maintenance, MRP, MRP2, the DOD equivalent of that, the MMAS, purchasing and materials management, production and inventory management. Look at all of these different fields that have to do with our world, our profession. Do you think, and I noticed down at the bottom there, do you think we're the only ones that do what we do? No. There is a huge world out there, but sometimes we put on those blinders. We become very narrowly focused on what we're doing. So I encourage you to look through some of these other fields and see how they apply to you. They do. They do. In our world of property and asset management, we can steal from other professions. We can steal from other occupational series. We can steal from other academic pursuits out there. Interesting. Interesting. So some more foundational elements that I have to consider then certainly are NPMA manuals. There are those manuals that are out there used for the certification. Absolutely. Fundamentals, intermediate, lots of the tests are being done out there. We have other NPMA literature and publications there. All of you should be getting the Property Professional, which is just chock full of articles trying to expand and espouse upon various technical issues in our world of PAM, right? There's the journal that's out there, which has some wonderful technical topics out there. Encourage you to sit and read that, expand upon your knowledge there. There's NPMA archived articles that are out there. There are the events that are presentations and papers and conference proceedings that are out there from all of the NESs going back 10, 15, 20 years. I'd encourage you to look at that. Steve has just presented another item there, so let me get to that. When we look at property asset management, when we look at PAM, it is a cross-functional specialty. You ain't alone out there. There are lots of other people that are dealing with that, and lots of other professional associations that deal maybe not our world in totality, but deal with our world from a variety of different perspectives. And you should be looking at their materials to see how those come into play and how those apply to you. Don't isolate yourself. You can learn. And using that word that Scott told me was in the title, you can learn to understand from those related professional associations. Don't lock yourself away. Understand that there's a whole new world out there, a whole nother world out there for our environment there. And if we want to look at it from the commercial side, absolutely, those cross-functional relationships, the relationships we have with other functions within our entity, you better believe it. Budget, capital expenditures, capital planning, acquisition, accounting, purchasing, logistics. A lot of these sound familiar to us, but go beyond what we deal with, or, depending upon your environment, that you're already dealing with these things and need to further your knowledge, your expertise, your depth and breadth of what you know, what you understand. So here are just a few of those things that I know we deal with some of them, but others we may not be directly responsible for to create them, but we should be looking at those to see how they impact us. And these are just a few that I brainstormed. I know for a fact there are a lot more items out there. So at that point, I want to step back for a minute and I want to ask the question, how did you get to where you are right now? How did you get here? And again, I'm going to use myself as a guinea pig because I know myself better than you folks. So how did you folks enter this career field? And I've seen folks use different approaches, right? I'll give you my approach, which is on the left-hand side. Did you enter the career field and then learn its specialization with no regard to understanding fundamentals of PAM? That was me. I was hired as a GS5, that's a government pay grade, which is the lowest of the low, all right? I was hired as an industrial property management specialist. I had no knowledge of the career field. That wasn't my area of expertise. That wasn't my area that I'd spent a long time in college and learned lots of other stuff about. Had no dealing with it. Or did you come in and learn the fundamentals through an educational program and then enter into the career field, maybe earning that degree in a related field, say like supply chain management or production and inventory management, and then for some reason found that this was interesting from that perspective, that you could get into government property management or contract property management or state and local or university or hospital. How did you get into the field? I am working on an article and I went out to 8 different property professionals from a wide range of environments, and I asked them a series of questions. I'm compiling that information, and we'll have it published in the NPMA Property Professional, God willing, that Billy Perchula, the editor, will see fit to take this summation, this qualitative research. But you'd be amazed at how people got into the environments that I see within NPMA. So an area that you need to think about in terms of your understanding, how did you get into this career field, right? Interesting. Interesting how people entered the career field, right? So where do you want to go? You can sit back and relax and do your 30 years or longer now, depending upon when you want to collect Social Security. Okay, that was meant to be humorous, right? Or you might want to think, where do I want to go? So again, I didn't want you to look at my opinion. Rather, I wanted you to look at the literature that was out there. Now, in some ways, this is my opinion because I was on the committee that wrote this ASTM VCS along with a group of other wonderful people. And we came up with a typology, and this is a truncated one. So if you're a member of ASTM, download 3140-19, it's still a valid VCS. And we put a whole bunch of stuff in there as to various, well, shall we say, organizational structures, right? That you could be an asset specialist. And I'm not going to read all those words. That's for you, an asset administrator, or asset manager, or asset management subject matter expert. Lots of different things with either work or, we'll get to this issue, a degree. And we need to think about that. But there's more. There were other titles, asset senior manager, who had, look at these key words here, decision-making authority. I know we have some leaders within NPMA who are at that rank, who are at that stage. They interface with other business managers and they present to executive manager. They have that broader, much broader responsibility that should include experience in other related disciplines, greater depth and breadth, right? Then you can even get up to the asset management director, multiple disciplines for which they're responsible. We have some of those within NPMA. We should be looking at them. We should be, I won't say comparing ourselves to them, but looking at how they achieved what they achieved. And we assume they achieved what they achieved based upon good decisions or them showing what they can do and how they can manage. Okay, so covered a little bit on that regard. Covered a little bit about how do you get there. So knowing what the foundational elements are in the regs, that's cool, or the literature that's out there. How do we decide that? So I did ask the question, how about education? Do you need a degree? Oh, I've bandied that one back. And you all should know my answer by now. My two-word answer that I use all the time, it depends. It depends, right? In my questioning, in this article that I prepared, and in an open forum that we did at one of the NESs a few years ago, we asked those people up on the panel, do you need a degree? Do you need a degree? And here's what they said. Some said yes, some said no. Whoa, wait a minute. So which is it? Well, you need to ask yourself, where do you plan to go? Okay, don't take my word for it. I don't want you to believe anything I say. I want you to go validate through the literature out there, through the commercial literature out there, through the ASTM VCSs that are out there, right? Need to ask that. So I wanted to pull up the ASTM VCS. And here are those levels that I presented before to you as to the management hierarchy, or that ladder that you could climb. There's no requirement that you have a formal degree. There might be some instances where college coursework in a related field is good. There were some recommendations made to either have an associate or bachelor's degree. And I know the NPMA has taken on that Herculean effort of trying to get a degree program started, and it is not easy in this day and age. So that is one of those things that they continue to have to push for and see where they can do that, right? Asset senior manager, that one says a recommended bachelor's degree, right? In a related field. Mine's not in a related field. Oops, right? So I had to work twice as hard to learn twice as much to be able to show my mastery of that knowledge. And then ultimately an asset manager. And I know that there are people out there that fit that category and do have the master's degree. Friends of yours, my peers, my professional peers, seek them out. Talk to them and see what there is available out there from that standpoint. And I'll give you one other word of advice here. Take advantage of every educational opportunity presented to you. If your company, if your environment, if your corporation, if the government, if any entity is going to say, would you like to take a training course? Take it. Improve yourself. Find value in what you can learn there. I need to expand a little bit because I differentiate between training and education, all right? I think that they're different from an operational standpoint. Too detailed to get into here, but let's assume that we've covered education. Let's talk about training for a minute. Definitely the NPMA. NPMA has a very rich, robust training program focusing on a myriad of aspects. It's going to give you a firm foundation in our career field. Nothing wrong with that, all right? NPMA offers seminars. The NES is an amazing opportunity to not hear from one or two or three people, but dozens presenting a variety of topics to expand the depth and breadth. But I also have to understand, though I sing the praises of NPMA, there are a lot of other associations that offer training classes that would expand not only the depth of your knowledge, but the breadth of your knowledge. And I call out NCMA, Association for Supply Chain, Institute of Supply Management, lots of them. Seek them out to broaden your horizon. Continued on training. A little bit here for, shall we say, training part two. On the job training. I would hope that every activity out there has a requirement for OJT. I know the federal government requires like 80 hours of training every X number of years to maintain their credentialing program, things of that nature. Wise to take advantage of any OJT. Learn, and from that learning experience, see if you can borrow anything from them to apply in your world there. My favorite area is this construct of self-directed learning involved with, fancy word is andragogy. Your adults, adult learning, because adults want immediacy of application. When we're kids, pedagogy, we're told you can use this someday, all right? Okay, yeah, good, all right? But for adults, we want to learn what we can apply today. And nothing should ever stop you from learning on your own. And I hope you continue that. And please don't tell me, but Doug, I'm busy. I got family life. I like to take my weekends off. I have this, I have that, and the other thing. I can give you horror stories of people who've come up to me and said, Doug, you know, I didn't want to engage in any of the formal training and whatnot. And well, I applied for a job and they wouldn't take me because I didn't have X or Y or Z. Sorry, guys. Lifelong learning as an adult learner. I encourage you there. Get your certifications. Please get your certifications. If you don't have your certifications, please go for it. CPPS, CPPA, CPPM. Why? It provides to your employer or any future employer a certain level of competence, of knowledge, clear evidence of knowledge and competence in numerous aspects of property and asset management. Yes, maybe some of the tests are getting tougher. I understand that. I'm concerned with that, but I encourage you, please go on with that. Mentoring. I have always considered it fun to answer questions for people because I view it as mentoring. But we're trying to start a more formal program. Scott Peterson, Wayne Norman, the Council of Fellows Leadership, they're looking at that mentoring program where you as an individual can ask for help from a CF. But I'll warn you, it ain't going to be handed to you on a silver platter. Mentoring is a two-way street where you require to do some work, not just be spoon-fed by the mentor. If you can't find one through NPMA, which should not be a problem, find a mentor in your organization, your first-line supervisor. Why not hold a weekly or bi-weekly a meeting and say, look, we're going to cover a topic here and try and express some greater understanding, or go to another area and ask them to do a half-hour presentation on the world that you're involved with, whether that's accounting, whether that's contracts, whether that's the law department. Get them involved and you learn from them, treating them as a mentor there. I got to shift gears just for a second here based upon a recent article I saw which really piqued my interest, all right? Technology. So when I started with the CASBA, roughly 1980, I really got to pull out my SF50. I think it might have been 79. We didn't have computers on our desks. Nope, no computers. No computers. We did not have computers on our desks. OMG in the current vernacular there. So the question had to be, did you have one on your desk in your office? In my opinion, as far as we're concerned today, no. My first time of having a computer in my home was about 1981. I had a Commodore 64, I had an Atari 800 XL, and then my son came along and he wanted to play with those computers. So really interesting to see how the world of computers is out there. So my question then, think about your job today. Could you do your job without a computer at your desk, attached to the network, attached to the internet or web? I don't think so. When I first started with computers, I used punch cards. Unnumbered punch cards, which if you dropped the deck, boy, were you in trouble because you basically have to start all over again. Yes, that's how I did computer programming on a Xerox Data Systems Sigma 7 at Queens College in the City University of New York, where on a Saturday night at 3 a.m. in the morning, they'd run my batch programs. Oh my goodness. Punch cards? Punch cards? Yes. We are much more sophisticated today, all right? Although I do have to share a trivia bit with you. If there are any DCMA people involved, there is still MoCAS out there, and MoCAS runs on that most up-to-date program ever written out there, COBOL. COBOL. Oh my goodness, right? There are some rumors that it is the oldest software program still being run on a government computer, which I thought was a rather humorous thing. So where this is leading to, it's not just understanding about property and asset management, PAM, it's also understanding that you need to expand your depth and breadth on technology. A recent Wall Street Journal article, there's the link to it, is companies want you to be computer savvy. They want you to have technological skills that are out there. So those that are expected on the part of everybody, and I hope all of you are here at this stage, right? Advanced word processing, Words or Docs or any of the other software, spreadsheets, Excel, all right? Advanced presentation, everybody uses PowerPoint, right? Email, either Outlook or Gmail, or I have AT&T using Yahoo, things of that nature. Communications, we're using GoToMeeting here, but they're calling up Teams and Slack, and I use Zoom on a weekly basis. Team ideation of coming up with new ideas and working together as a team to create these ideas. Introductory AI, I urge caution. There, of course, is Chat GPT. out there. I love playing with that stuff, and I actually did some stuff. There are weaknesses in those, and every big company's out there that are trying to push their artificial intelligence. If we go to the higher level skills, things like data visualization, I have some books here by Tufte that he says that PowerPoint destroyed our ability to present meaningful data, and how he prefers visualizations, right? Project management, oh, definitely in this day and age. Customer relationship, the Salesforce, that's not our forte. Low code or no code automation, how many of you have programmed? And these programming, concurrent programming fundamentals, Python, JavaScript, R, SQL. Oh my goodness, my son's a computer geek. What can I tell you? We often talk about some of the new stuff out there. Guys, it ain't just good enough to use an 8.5 by 11 cardstock to write information down. It's not just good enough even to use a relational database like Access or tables created in Word. Companies, the government, they are expecting much more of you. So what does all of this have to do? And I got to keep an eye on my time here. Right? 40 years of doing property, more than 40 years of property and asset management. I wanted to share with you some ideas, some directions, some references for you to grow and mature within our profession. It ain't just going to happen on its own. You got to make it happen by your hard work, by your continuous learning. Right. So with that said, you have my best wishes for your success. Now, I don't want to leave you with that, because I realize some of you are going to say, hey, Doug, that's all fine and good. This isn't what I really love doing. Okay, then let me leave you with a couple thoughts, right? A couple thoughts that I think are important. Closing thought number one by Steve Jobs, right? Your work is going to fill a large part of your life. And the only way to be truly satisfied is to do what you believe is great work. Great work. What we do impacts the corporation, the hospital, the university, the government, the taxpayers that's out there. And the only way to do great work is to love what you do. I've been blessed by the good Lord. I didn't always love what I started as a property administrator, as an industrial. In fact, there were times I came home and sat with my wife and I was near tears saying, I have no idea what I'm doing or why I'm doing it, but they want me to do this. If you haven't found it yet, keep looking. Don't settle. As with all matters of the heart, you'll know when you find it. I'd like to give you a second one, which has sort of been my motto that I've tried to live by, that came from John Wesley, right? Here's my encouragement. Do all the good you can, by all the means you can, in all the ways you can, in all the places you can, at all the times you can, to all the people you can, as long as ever you can. I encourage you, don't take a seat on the sidelines. Rather, I would encourage you to go out there and do the best work that you can. And I have one last closing thought, which is a challenge that's out to you, coming out of Theodore Roosevelt. Look, when you're working hard, this is important. It's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the person who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs. I know I've made plenty of mistakes, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds. You guys, every day you're out there on the front lines, who knows great enthusiasm, the great devotions, who spends himself or herself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall ever be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. Go out there and work, strive, challenge yourself to be the best property and asset manager that you can be through learning, through mentoring with people, through taking on those tasks that maybe nobody else wants to do. On that note, looking at my time, I have to say thank you. It is always my joy and pleasure. Yeah, I'm a retired practitioner. The body has grown frail and weak. Don't believe people when they tell you you can live to a ripe old age. Don't get old. Right? I'm a retired practitioner and professor. I serve as a loving grandfather to my 2 grandkids who I love dearly, and who tries to think deep thoughts about property and asset management. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. I wish you God's blessing. I wish you a fruitful and a career that you love, and a career that for me has been an amazing journey. So, Scott, I'll turn it back over to you.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Doug, and thank you for taking the time to put this together. I really appreciate it. I love the presentation. I think there's a lot of takeaways that everyone can take from the presentation. Lisa, were there any questions that were still outstanding that may have come through?
Yeah, because I can't see the question box. It truncates it so there's only one line showing.
Let me take a look. There were a few comments, of course, a lot of people grateful for Doug's time today and the encouragement he's offering. There is a question, what does MIAM mean in your designations?
I am a member of the Institute of Asset Management. That is a professional association over in Great Britain and England, where you have to fill out like a 30-page application documenting all your work to get that designation, and listing your contributions to the career field of asset management. So the Institute of Asset Management, and I'm a member. So I'm a MIAM.
And there are a lot of people grateful, but just in case since you can't see it, here's one. This is a throwback. Do you know COBOL? This was earlier.
Yeah, I never wrote a program in COBOL. Forgive me. I used Fortran in my world, but yeah, I worked with MoCAS and the E55 code and the PA codes and all that good stuff of updating that. Cool time. But when I saw the little factoid, and I don't know if it's a fact, so I'll use the factoid, that it is the oldest program still used by the Department of Defense in MoCAS.
And there is someone here who said they were a trusted agent with DCMA and used MoCAS. So
cool. All right. Very good. Wait a minute. They're a trusted agent on this webinar?
I didn't say that.
Very good. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. There's my email address. It is still active. There is my phone number. It is still active. I have been told that if you have a problem, feel free to give me a call. I will be glad to tell you where to go in the regulations. All right. So always glad to help. So Scott, thank you. Lisa, thank you. And I will stop sharing my screen.
All right. Thank you, Doug.
All right.
Scott, do you mind one
Yes, I'm
little
sorry,
housekeeping? If you'd like the slides to this presentation, you can email education@mpma.org. They will be online as well under the archived materials, conference presentations. I made a little block there for AMAM presentations, but you have to be a member and logged in to see that. But if you want them, you can email and we will just email that to you.
And I'd just like to close by, again, thanking Doug for putting this together and sharing his thoughts and experience and expertise. I'd also like to thank all of you for joining us over the last month of Asset Management and Fleet Management Awareness Month. I really appreciate your time and your willingness to participate in these webinars. And again, thank you very much. There may be a follow-on survey that you see come out. I need to work with Lisa on that a little bit. Again, if you have any topics or any areas of interest that you did not see covered this month, or that you want to see covered at future MPMA events or seminars, please let us know. We're always looking for topics and ways to stay current with everything going on in our various different work environments. So with that, again, thank you very much. Have a wonderful rest of your day, weekend, and I will see you at an upcoming MPMA event. Cheers, everybody.